the mythical Alpe d'Huez. Is this the greatest challenge of them all?
He wants to win at the summit of this giant of the Alps.
Legends have been made.
This will be the greatest win because it's Alpe d'Huez, the mecca of world cycling.
It's time for another to etch his name into Tour de France folklore.
The pressure is on, the race is on in earnest.
Does Schleck have the team to keep the yellow jersey?
We've never seen a contest like this on the mountain for years.
Will Evans be forced to fight another solo battle?
Cadel Evans has got some power in him this afternoon.
D-Day has arrived at the Tour de France. Today's stage promises to be an absolute classic. It's a rendezvous which stays in and around the French Alps. The riders must negotiate 3 monster climbs, and by the time they get to the bottom of Alpe d'Huez, they would have covered 195 kilometres, with the brutal 15-kilometre rise still to come. So some sore legs are expected by day's end. They probably weren't thinking of pain at the rollout for the Tour's second longest stage. It was an early start for the warriors of the road. They left the town of Embrun before the steady drag to the city of Briançon. 4 riders were quick to move off the front. In the quartet, German Stefan Schumacher, who has made a bit of a habit of creating an early escape. The Galibier has appeared in the Tour more than any other alpine climb. Schumacher joins the likes of Coppi, Gall and Pantani. The Gerolsteiner rider, the first to clear the summit in 2008 and gain maximum points in the King of the Mountains competition. Spaniard Ruben Perez had a minor mishap shortly after conquering Galibier. In fact, crashes were the order of the day. Australia's crocodile man Adam Hansen kissed the bitumen, as did big George Hincapie, who had the wounds to prove his heavy fall. This was a day when CSC had no choice but to attack Cadel Evans in order to extend the 8-second lead over the Australian on the overall standings. As he did yesterday, Stuart O'Grady set the tempo at the front of the peloton, the aim to launch either Frank Schleck or Carlos Sastre with the view of hurting Evans. Further up the road, 4 became 2. Schumacher and Peter Velits of Team Milram led the stage on the approach to the peak of the Col de la Croix de Fer, as CSC continued to inflict pain on the riders that mattered most.
There we look to, there's nobody missed out of all the contenders at the moment. They're still in there. And for me, Christian van der Velde is now on a good day. He's not far away from the lead here, so he is watching. He said if he sees his chance and he feels good, he will attack, and he's looking good at the moment. There's Andy Schleck in the white jersey. Johan van Summeren alongside Evans, looking after him and hurting himself, but he's doing it just now.
Efemkin moving up there as well for Team AG2R. Good to see a lot of these riders are just staying. There's Kim Kirken, there's Christian van der Velde, looking very concentrated indeed, Phil. I have to say, he doesn't look like a man under pressure at all at the moment.
He looks as though he's almost relishing the thought of climbing Alpe d'Huez to me. There's Carlos Sastre. He always looks a little bit tired, but he never seems to get left behind. Astalosa, there's Menchov.
Now Peter Velits has gone. Peter Velits has now decided to fly the coupe, and he's left Stefan Schumacher behind. This is a great acceleration by this young man, Phil.
Well, that's a fantastic effort by the young man here as he goes to the summit now in his first Tour de France, looking for the maximum points at the top of the all-category climb. Schumacher clearly struggling, didn't do any work on this climb with him. He couldn't, and now Velits has decided he wants all of the prize for himself. Velits is going to go over the top first, but not by very much.
Well, not by very much, and still Kurt Adler-Arvidsson.
Oh, what a lovely picture.
Well, it is.
Not riding a bike.
It is for you and I sitting here just looking down from the great height on that, Phil, but it's not if you're a professional bike rider, because you've still got an awful long way to drag your body up to the top of this mountain. It's a dramatic mountain, the Col de la Croix de Fer, and it's a dramatic descent over the other side as well.
And still, it looks as though Kurt Adler-Arvidsson is going to go over the top here. He'll be an invaluable rider for Team CSC. It'll give them 4 men in this front group, and the odds-on, again, hitting at different angles. We've not seen any effort from Cadel Evans. You can see him, let me see, 3, 6, 7 riders down the line, actually on the wheel of Chris Froome, Cadel Evans, and he's not in any difficulty at all. He's waiting for what he knows now will be showdown on the climb of the Alpe d'Huez, and if he doesn't lose a minute on the climb, he'll win the Tour de France. He knows that, Paul.
Well, that's all he has to do on a day like this, Phil. He knows he's just got to watch Frank Schleck. He knows he's got to watch Bernard Cole. He knows he cannot give too much time to the climbers. He's got, I think, in his mind, Phil, a magical number that he feels he can leave the Alps behind the overall leaders and still win this bike race. However, he's keeping it very secret because he won't share it with us.
I don't blame him, frankly, because the pressure that's on him is enormous. The whole of Australia is cheering for him. They've never had an Australian favourite before, and they've certainly never had an Australian winner of the Tour. There's no sporting event in the world that attracts a crowd like this. No, the natural grandstands of the countryside of the world. And now we have Peter Velits. He's 1 hour and 31 minutes behind the race leader of the Tour de France. But for him, he's now on top of the Croix de Fer. These boys are going to grab those newspapers, put them up underneath their racing jerseys, keep the wind out off their chest. They always fear bronchitis at this stage of the Tour de France. They wrap up for warmth on the descent. They don't need it once they get to the Alpe, because it's going to be the hottest day on the Tour de France on the Alpe for sure. Bernard Cole is out hunting for those King of the Mountain points. He'll sprint for second place, and that will consolidate his lead in that competition.
Well, it's important, I think, for Bernard Cole, Phil. Not only does he want to try and win this bike race overall, which he'll have to do with time when he goes towards the Alpe d'Huez, but winning the King of the Mountains classification for him was, in fact, one of his childhood dreams, and there he's got a few more points in the bag. Jérôme Pinot here has taken advantage of not being a highly placed rider in the overall classification, and he's decided to come across the gap. He was given his freedom because nobody really wanted to chase him down. But it's a good move by the rider from Boyd Telecom, and he's just about to make the junction with the rider who has been in the lead since the 3rd kilometre. And because of this daredevil descent by both of these riders, from a minute at the top, they're now looking at a 2-minute advantage.